Good evening. So I'm Olga Hernandez, and he's Dr. Izquierdo. We're going to talk today. He's going to talk today about egnation, genetics, and epigenetics. And we're going to wait a couple of minutes in case no one else wants to join us. Remember, please, that you can send us all the questions, all the doubts you may have along this presentation. They're going to be completely anonymous, okay? And after the presentation, we're going to answer you.
I welcome you all together. He's Dr. Izquierdo, as Olga said, and I'm today here for you to talk a little bit about egg donation, most of it about genetics and epigenetics, which is actually a topic that is very interesting for me. And it's something, it's always part of my daily consultation, because to understand these two topics is something that helps us a lot in the process of taking into consideration egg donation and moving forward in this direction to have a family. First of all, introduction to what's genetics. Genetics is a field of the biology that takes care of understanding what are the genes, which is the meaning those genes has on ourselves. As we all know, genetic or the genes are pretty much the code that the body uses to produce all of the proteins and all of the things that make us what we are. It's like like a cooking recipe that we have available, and the body uses to know what we need to do, like the instructions to be what we are. The DNA is the language that this code has, is a double chain of acids and nucleotides. It has 46 chromosomes. And then to understand what's a chromosome, if we have this long chain with the DNA, this chain needs to arrange. It cannot be just straight around the cell. It needs to be packed so we can organize it, like we do with everything. Like we roll socks to have it in the drawer, then we roll the DNA to have it in our genetics. And the way we roll it is called a chromosome. So chromosome is not other than the DNA chain rolled into itself and packed so it can be carried easily. We have, as I said, 46 pair of chromosomes, and say 36 chromosomes. They are all in pairs, the 1 to the 22. The 23 pair might be a pair if we're talking about a girl, because there's 2 times X chromosome. But if we're talking about a guy, that's not a pair, but it's an X and a Y. In this long language that we call the DNA, are included 13,000 genes. Genes is the minimum of DNA that we might have to have a code. To get it properly is, like we say, the minimum unit that if we change, we might have an effect on something. It's like if we're speaking that DNA is a language, all the nucleotides are letters, a gene is a word, and this word has a meaning. Every one of those genes may produce an average 3 proteins, and one gene has a very different size. We have very long words, we have a bit shorter words, and as I said before, they are in charge to produce in average, very rough, 3 proteins each. The epigenetics is something that was discovered with the time, and it got very interesting back in the war, when we discovered that the babies or the children from those people who suffered the war were different. Let's say, for example, this is mostly in German population. They were able to see that those children from German families who suffer in the pregnancy, the deprivation of the war and the horrible things that happened there with hunger and that, they were very different to their parents. They were shorter, they will be smaller, they will have problems dealing with sugar and with the metabolism for carbohydrates. And that make very curious the doctors of the time. And they also discovered that it was also the possibility of, with taking toxics, smoking, drinking, of changing how the person will look, just not for the moment of the birth, but how the whole life. And with that, they discovered that there is a possibility of changing the DNA alive. It means we have the DNA, but the DNA is not like something written on stone. The DNA it can be modified. It's a very redundant language. And in this redundant language, we have parts that are meant to be written, and we have parts that are not meant to be written. There are some molecules called methyls that they attach to the DNA and they move on the DNA to allow us to read or not read parts. Then epigenetics is the study who allow us to know how much we can change this DNA and which changes in the DNA can turn into changes in our cells as well. The principal action, how this all happens, is those three molecules. So the body is actually capable in the live DNA of moving this methylase, demethylizing, taking it out or putting it back, so we can read or not read parts that at the end may have an effect on how we look and how we produce proteins. This is what I said before. We can methylate or acetate, and with that, we might as well allow us to read or not read parts of the DNA that we have there written. This is very, very, very different because, as we know, the DNA is the code for everything from the hair to the cells to the fat. And this way we change those materials may allow us to change ourselves as well in all parts of our body. For example, babies whose mother had not eaten properly in the pregnancy are more likely to have diabetes as grown-ups. Babies whose mother had a consumption of drugs or toxics in the pregnancy may have alterations in how their brain system is produced. And this all goes forward. The studies were confirmed, and then we were able to see that identical twins with one genetic might have difference in between. This is called this way when you have an embryo. And if this embryo divides into two other embryos, we are saying that this is a monozygotic twin pregnancy. And those supposed to have an identical, exactly DNA material. To understand it better, to think that we are just the result of the genetics, and that these genetics are black and white, written on a back cap, and we just read it, is not right. As we are capable in the pregnancy to change our genes a little bit, we're also capable as grown-ups to change how our body reacts to these genes. That's why, for example, as we know, people with diabetics, people with lipid problems, with cholesterol, they might, just with improving her habits, doing sport and eating better, change this disease and change the way their body reacts to all those things. And if we're capable to do that as grown-ups, the power of a mother to affect the babies while they're developing the whole system it's going to use as a grown-up is even higher. This is an example that we really like to use a lot, because I want you to see those two pictures, and I want you to start thinking about who's who. There are a couple of sisters, they're all siblings, and two of those are actually twins, monozygotic, twins with the same DNA, and the other two are just sisters. And at the end of the presentation, the idea is that I will let you know which one of those is each one. Why is this so important in egg donation? Why is that a principle that we want to speak about? Because from my personal view, genetics are a bit overestimated. They are not as important as we think. And I want to present you this very funny graphic that we have here, so you can understand how big is what we think DNA is and how little it is in fact, the impact of it in ourselves. Then we can see that the difference in between being a cat and a person is just a 10% of a DNA. Even more dramatic, the difference between a human and a banana is just 40%. Just 40% is what makes us different from another banana. And in humans ourselves, as we compare to a person that's besides me, who's very different to me, let's say 2 completely different persons, as I am 1 meter and 74 centimeters, 65 kilograms, a white, dark hair, dark eyes. And if I compare myself to a 2-meter big guy, blonde, blue eye, and very light hair, the difference between that guy and me is just 0.1% of our genetics. Just this 0.1% is what makes us different, which is a very, very small amount of DNA. And if we are actually also capable of changing that, or we are not, I'm a man. If women are actually capable of changing the genetics of the babies while they're carrying it, the differences in between the genetics, those babies and their mother are even smaller. This is not just for egg donation important. There's actually things that we have in our genes and might be expressed yes or no. It means the DNA tries at the time always to solve problems that we might have, like a good software. You have your computer and your computer try to take care of the possible problems that you may have. Our body try as well to correct the effects that you may have in the genetics. And also in the division, as you know, anytime we produce 2 cells out of 1, they double the genetic material so we can have exact copies. The body is all the time trying to make this work good. And if they find some problems there, they try to destroy it. And what can be that wrong? For example, cancer is one of these things. Cancers are mutations on the cells who pretty much stop them from living in a society as good members of it and tell them, just grow, be yourself, and care for nobody else. Those cells are normally attacked from your immune system, attacked from ourselves to stop them to develop. So this field is not just important in egg donation or in the process of being birthed. This is part of our everyday. In any moment of our lives, our body is trying to repair the DNA to make it better so we don't have problems. This is a little bit to explain where do these changes may occur. So first of all, these changes can just occur when there is an embryo already, before the DNA is not complete. As you know, we get half our DNA from a mother and the father in sperms and eggs. Once they get together, those fragments of it attach, produce the 23 pair of chromosomes, and then it can be changed. After they are dividing and we start producing cells, the body starts changing those molecules from DNA that are produced to improve them and making them better. That's why the embryo may be changed while it's producing an embryo, in the implantation, and in the fetal phase. Also after the baby is already producing organs, brain, heart, and the rest of it. Factors that influence epigenetics, what I said before: contact with toxins, stress, nutrition, and other endocrine factors might be part of the process. We need to understand that at the end, as proud as we are to be so different from animals, we're simple animals. And the way we react to things is sometimes instinctively, and this is guided by hormones and neurotransmitters. And those are also capable of affecting our genetics in many, many ways. One very important thing that we know already, and it's related to epigenetics, is what we do in their pregnancy. That's why we are always trying to tell our pregnant women that they should eat properly, that they should avoid plain sugar, that they should avoid high fatty meals, that they should try to eat natural, to eat vegetables and fruits because they have high levels of vitamins and antioxidants. At the end, oxidative stress is also a way to damage DNA, but at the end may damage the baby in the future. The stress, as I said before, when we this stress situation is something that's changed in us, humankind, as a species. Animals, they feel stress for two reasons. Are they threatened from an enemy, natural enemy, or they threaten because they don't have food? In the way we evolved and learn how to change our environment, in contrast to the animals that they adapt to the environment, we've discovered how to find stress and things that are different, like work, transport, mobility, and other things. Although we've learned to stress ourselves about other things, the answer from our body to stress is the same. Adrenaline, cortisol, and hormones and neurotransmitters that at the end may change our body and may change our situation and also our genetics. Toxins as well. Also, there are heavy metals that we know may affect the way the DNA is metabolized. Many pesticides. These are things that are meant to destroy vegetable cells, but they can also come in our genetics and damage it. And for example, products from other vegetables and other toxins, mycotoxins, may as well be effective for us. There's also things like endocrine disruptors, said in a more understandable way. There are external hormones produced from vegetables that could actually affect our metabolism. For example, we know that soy has high dosages of phytoestrogens who are very similar to the estrogens of women and may as well affect the way the woman deal with her hormone cycles. How is this all important in egg donation? When we do an egg donation cycle, what we try to do is to provide this woman or this family with a new member that suits the family. The Spanish legislation is very, very stark in this purpose and has very, very strong guidelines how it's supposed to work. And one of those guidelines is, in order for this baby to suit the family and to be perfect, the donor and the receiver must be alike. So we're speaking that in normal terms, two different people are different just in 0.1% of the DNA. And we are actually looking for two women who are very alike. The difference is even smaller. And if at the end, the epigenetics is capable of transforming this DNA to make it different, then the relationship, how alike the DNA from the mother and the baby is going to be even more at the end, which is amazing in egg donation. Now, I want to explain a little bit how egg donation works in our clinics or with us. It starts with donor selection, where we are very rigorous with. We take care of being sure that the donor is in perfect state of health, that she carries no disease, that herself is in best position to produce good quality eggs, that she's also provided with a good ovarian reserve. Then the first thing we do is we produce a stimulation. We make the donor produce eggs so we can retrieve them. After that, we take care of preparing the lining of the womb of the receiver, which is capable of supporting this embryo. After we retrieve the eggs and we fertilize it, we wait embryo to achieve a blastocyst, a day 5 embryo. Why? Because this is the longest we can take care of the embryo in the culture. After this moment, the embryo must break, go outside of the shell and implantate. And that's, if we've got an embryo to day 5 and it's starting to expand, we know this is an embryo that can break the shell, grow inside and attach and produce a pregnancy. That's why we don't transfer embryo before, because after that moment, we know they're very likely to do so. If we transfer them before those embryos, we're always with the doubt, would this embryo have achieved this stage, yes or no? The selection of the donor in our clinics is very simple, that we always used to do fresh cycles to provide the receivers with best quality eggs. We all know in fertility that women or cycles with frozen eggs have 20% less blastocysts. And in order to go responsible with the egg donors that provide us with eggs and with the babies that are produced there, we always go for fresh cycles. To do so, we don't retrieve eggs, freeze them, and then have them frozen, prepared for women to come to us. What we do is we created a database of donors that are awaiting to be called if they are needed to provide eggs for a donor. It is a very, very rough number. 500 is the maximum that we have there. It goes up and down depending on which ones we use, we need it, we have help us, and which ones come new. Regarding to the legal obligations, it reduces to around 100%. Having a bit more fine details and characterizing those women depending on the things they do, their hobbies, and the preferences of the pair, the couple, we go up to 20. And out of those 20 donors, we end up with a list of 4 that we decide regarding physical, genetical, disease matching, and the medical checkup. Out of those 4, we line them in a line, and we start with the first, and the other ones remain available. So if the donation is not successful and we don't produce blastocysts, we can call them again to make a new cycle for the receiver. And this is the result. The girls on the left side are identical twins with exact good same genetics. The girls on the other side are your sister that look very much alike. This is how important or how much the genetics has an impact on what we are, who we are. This slide is just to present you the whole group. We are growing a lot. We have many clinics in Europe. We have one clinic in Germany, in Baden-Baden, one in Manchester, and the 3 in Spain that you already know, one in Donosti, one in Madrid, with all this available for you, and one in Alicante, where I'll be sitting, waiting for you if you need to have some questions. Thank you for your attention. There's something very important that I would like to say. If at any point we have too many questions and we cannot answer them, I would really ask you to write us those questions under this email direct. You can write us at contact@ivfspain.com and present your queries or your questions. Because you couldn't write it here, or because you're very shy and rather do in a personal direct contact. We'll be happy to help you there. That being said, we're coming back to Olga and to your questions. So we can start.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Izquierdo. So there we go. First question we have here is, does the different blood type between me and the donor affect pregnancy or the baby somehow?
No, it doesn't. This is a very important question, because this is part of the things that women can wish themselves when we're looking for the donor. And then women can say, okay, I want our the blood group, the donor of mine, to be the same. but this has no medical relevance, or however. In fact, if there's different, there's no consequences for the success of the transfer of the pregnancy. The only effect it has is depending on how we deal with this process. So if the couple does not want the baby to know that egg donation is the way they got pregnant, then the compatibility between the blood group of the mother and the egg donor should be desired, because this is a very easy way for the baby to discover in the future that there is something missing there. Let's say puppy is A positive, mommy is A negative, and the baby is B positive. There's something there that's not passing to it. That's the only medical or social reason why a donor and a mother should have the same blood group. Other than that, it's not necessary.
Thank you. So next question. How do we make sure that we don't get a donor who has had a medical issue or even mental health issues?
Well, first thing, no medical issues are allowed in the donors. When I said that we were picking these 500 women, those are in the register are not allowed to have any medical disease. And this is not because I want, this is a legal situation in Spain. The Spain government, the Ministry of Health, had very clear lines which person can donate. And all medical conditions, included psychological or psychiatric conditions, are excluding factors. And although egg donation is anonymous in Spain, it's anonymous for us, for the patients, but not for the clinic and not for the Spanish Ministry of Health. There is a registration system that's nationwide where all women who make donation get registered there, and we can always trace back whose donor, whose patient, whose receiver had who, and the Ministry of Health is capable of taking all this information and proving if there are some incongruences there. So this is safe.
Okay. Next one. Do we have Black donors?
Of course, this is something very, very spectacular and very helpful in the process of having clinics all around Spain, because that provides us to have a lot of Spanish donors, but also a lot of international donors. As you know, we have in Europe the Erasmus, for example, which is a stipendium that allows students to move in within Europe and have a year to study abroad. This is something very popular in between students in Europe and worldwide. And if you compare Spain to other European countries, you'll see that we have a lot of offer and things to do in social life, nature, sports and things, weather as well. And we are, in comparison to other European countries, very cheap. That's why we are very popular foreign studies students seal place to be. And that's why allow us to have donors from all ethnicities or all characteristics.
Okay, thank you. And do you have embryo guarantees, fresh embryo transfer, or frozen embryo transfers?
This is something we're changing in the clinic, and it's based on the studies that we perform in the clinic. We've discovered with the time that there is in our facilities no big difference in between fresh and frozen transfers. That the success and the live birth rate are very similar. And knowing that fresh transfer are very complicated to deal with, both logistics and emotional, we're moving forward to the future of frozen transfers, which mean to be more successful for the patients. What do I mean? We always go for fresh egg retrievals, fertilizations, and production of embryos, and we need to suit a window of stay of a patient. We might feel tempted to perform an egg retrieval earlier or sooner just to match this window. And by doing so, you can compromise the quality of the eggs that you're retrieving. With that, at the end, you're also compromising the quality of the cycle you're getting. On the other side, if the process of waiting for the embryos to develop is a very, very stressful situation for the patients. If they are in Spain waiting to get a transfer and they get this email every day with the update of how the embryos are doing, this is something that the patients experience as a lot of stress. It's very stressful. And the stress is not really a good factor to start the pregnancy with. To avoid these two things, and knowing that the success rates in frozen and fresh transfers in the clinic of Alicante and most of the things in the group are pretty much the same, we decided to do frozen transfer. From that point of view, the embryos are produced before the patients come to us. And once they come to us, they know there's an embryo waiting for them, ready to be transferred, whose quality and everything. It makes it easier, simpler, reduces the time the patient needs to be in Spain, and reduces the possibility that a patient might come to us and have no embryo because the cycle didn't go well, which can happen. Nature is nature. This is not mathematically. That's why we also don't offer the guarantee of a cycle and guarantee embryos. Then it's easier for the patients and for anyone.
Okay, another question. Can my partner provide the sperm in Manchester and do the implantation in Madrid, or they have to travel twice? How does it work?
Principally, a few time ago, it was very easy. The problem that we have now with Manchester is Brexit. Since the United Kingdom does not belong to the European Union anymore, all things moving from one country to the other must go through a duty. And this makes very complex the process of bringing sperms, eggs, or any human material from one country to the other. Possible it is, but it's very complicated, and sometimes it's easier to take a flight for a couple of hours to us, just to leave the sperms and go back. If the sperm quality is suitable as well, we can froze the sperms of the couple in one visit that he can make for a couple of hours if needed. And then the next time they come back, they come just for the transfer.
Yep. Another question. Are we informed every day about the progression from fertilization to day 5?
Yes, this is something we're still doing with the patients that are already in ongoing cycles. But as I said before, the idea is to change all this into always frozen cycles. And what we're going to provide the patients is a notebook or a report of how the embryos develop all the way to from the fertilization to the blastocyst state.
And Dr. Izquierdo, when selecting the egg donor, do you try much characteristics like eye color, hair color, as close as possible to the woman who will carry the baby?
That's a must. That's not a can. This is something we must do. This is something we cannot avoid. This is the Spanish law.
And what about the probability of success, getting pregnant, for a woman who is 46 years old?
Well, we must confess, and this is something that we gotta say, the average age of our patients in the clinics, it's 44 to 45 years old. So a 46-year-old woman is not that old for egg donation, regardless what you've had before in her country. In egg donation cycles, the average success rate per transfer in the clinics is 60%. And after 3 transfers, we have a cumulative success rate from above 90% in most of our centers.
And do we use only proven donors and guarantee a minimum number of blastocysts?
We do try to get always donors that have proven fertility, but the problem is also the legislation. After a couple of cycles, the donor cannot provide any donations anymore until you run out. So it's not an strictly necessary topic that they have proven fertility. And the second part of the question, I forgot.
So sorry, but I discarded because it was already answered. I also forget about that. I'm sorry. So if the person who has written that can read it again, I thought it was something about if we guarantee a minimum number of blastocysts.
The guarantee of the minimum of blastocysts. Yeah, we guarantee, depending on what the woman wants, 3 or 5 blastocysts.
And another one, what information about the donor do you share with the patients and with the baby?
Okay. The characteristics of the donor are shared in them. They must fit and sweet mother. Nothing else than that. So the hair color, skin color, and that is going to be provided. Age and blood group. That's it. Anonymity is very important in Spain, and it's not something we can avoid. This is the legislation as well.
And how much information can the clinic have about the donor?
All of them.
Can we see photos or?
The clinic has all the information, but the patient gets none of those. So the donors of our centers go to our clinics to make the egg retrievals. They go to follow-ups by us. So from the donors, we have all the information in the clinic, but these cannot be provided to the receivers. This is illegal in Spain.
And if the sperm is frozen, does this reduce the sperm quality, or is a fresh sperm better?
Depends on the quality of the sperm. A normal sperm quality shouldn't have a negative effect in the fertilization if it's frozen or fresh. That's why when we use sperm donors, we always use frozen sperm, and they are very successful in producing embryos. So if the quality of the sperm is good, it's the same, regardless frozen or fresh. If we have a man with a low sperm quality, then we must try, first of all, to improve the quality depending on hormones level from him or other things. And if not possible, then we'll ask this man to be for a longer time here to have a fresh sperm sample provided for the donation, or a TISA.
Thank you. Next question. How can men and women prepare their bodies for a donor egg cycle?
Well, first of all, the first thing that we always need to say and to do in fertility is to try to stay healthy. And we try to stay healthy, I mean, try to do that, what your body tells us, that's good for us. Nowadays, we are bombarded with tons of information, people trying to tell you how to live your life and what's the best for you. From not eating gluten, not eating dairy, not eating meat, not eating vegetables, all things are possible there. And as a grown up, we kind of know our bodies. I think we all know what we eat, what makes us ill, what we eat, what makes us feel good. And regarding food, what I recommend is always go and eat that, what you know makes you feel good. And try to avoid those things, what we know make us feel bad. First principle. Regarding sports and activity, we always need to remember that cardiovascular activity, like walks and normal cardiovascular exercise is good. Very, very strong exercising might be a bad thing for this cycle and treatments. Because when you're trying very hard to train your body physically, you are at the end robbing or kidnapping good supplies and supplements for your womb. The womb is not a very important organ other than in reproductive medicine. That's why strong exercising is not recommended. Alcohol and toxics, something we should keep it low or not do at all. And other than that, occupational things. For example, we do recommend that the men don't take very hot bath because it may affect the sperm quality. Riding bike can also be affected due to the pressure that the seat makes on the testicles. Very tight clothing for the men is also not a good idea. In terms of the girls, pretty much eating good, making some activity, staying healthy, being active, sleeping good.
Thank you. Another question. What motivates the donor? Do they get paid?
This is not the principal motivation of that. This is a very altruistic act what they do. There is a legal, so in legislation, there's also how much money they can get. This is standardized for all of them. And it's not an amount that we can say that's the main motivation for the donors to make this process. Egg donation is a very complicated process. It requires surgery, it requires injections, it requires a lot of effort from the donors. And I don't think the money they get is enough to say they would do that for the money. This is just a compensation for all the things they must do to be able to donate eggs. And I'm pretty sure the main reason for that is altruistic.
I think so. Another one. Is there a way to improve sperm quality, like taking supplements?
Yes, depends on the quality. If the sperm is good, it's good to be like that. But if the sperm quality must be improved, we know that vitamin C in high dosages is effective in improving the sperm quality. Vitamin E is a potent antioxidant who has also a positive effect on the sperm quality. High ejaculation frequency, having more than 2 ejaculations a week, may as well increase the quality of the sperm in some cases. If we think that there are some conduction problems from the testicles to the ejaculation, those patients may benefit from antibiotics or anti-inflammatory medications like Voltaren, diclofenac. And some things that we can also do to improve the sperm quality is to check the hormones of the man and perhaps give him some hormonal treatment to improve the sperm quality as well if needed.
Do we use facial recognition technology to map the characteristics of the mother?
Not really. This is a software which is very controversial at the moment because this requires these facial features to be sent to another place and then be given back to us, and makes that this information is not just at us in the clinic to somewhere else, and that makes us a bit uncomfortable at the moment. So that is not something we are implementing yet in the clinic. But the facial features are something we do observational. We have the selection of donors, and then the committee decides which is the most suitable for the receiver.
Next one. Do you have any success for women with adenomyosis? And
Yes.
how do you prepare the womb
Yes,
if the woman is in the UK?
There's many therapy options for patients with adenomyosis. Some of those including downregulation with GNR analogas. In this specific case, I would like the patient to contact us directly so we can have a chat on that, because it's a very specific question. This is something we can speak a bit longer about together with her.
Okay. Remember, you can send us an email. And
at ivfspain.com.
exactly. Next one. If you are a new patient, how long do all the tests take before going to Spain for the egg transfer?
8
And
weeks.
if you have already those tests, are you okay?
Yeah, we have no waiting list in the clinic at the moment, or yet. I don't know if this is coming someone in the future, but the average patient wait 8 weeks until the first transfer. And the idea is to perform those tests that we might need to the transfer before that. So we put all things on walking at the same time, so we can go on these 8 weeks to from testing the donor, testing the patient, making the cycle, preparing the endometrial line transfer, all landing at the same time in about 8 weeks.
Next one. Is the same information shared with the patient if embryo donation and egg donation? And when are they going to receive this information?
It's the same. It is the same information. The only thing is that for the embryo donation, the patient will receive the same information from egg donor and sperm donor, but it's the same.
Do we have immune protocols for women with history of recurrent miscarriages? And which protocol?
Depends on the patient. So there are in reproductive medicine some clinics giving blind treatment to patients who they think they have immune problems like intralipids, immunoglobulins, granulocyte. We are a different opinion in this process. We think that in order to do this treatment, we need to assure that there is an immunological problem with the patient. We have a tool, it's called IMAP. This IMAP allows us to see if there are some alterations or disbalance in the immunological profile of the patient, to therefore, with this information, give her the immunological treatment she needs. That in terms from NK cells, lymphocytes B, and that. If we're speaking about clear HLA incompatibilities, we can test them as well, and if it's needed, then give them treatment the patients on that way as well.
One more question. How many eggs do we need to have to get one healthy embryo?
This is a very bad question, because we need to understand that this is all natural. There is not such a thing as a cooking recipe. How many eggs the donor will produce, how many embryos I'm going to have at the end, how many I transfer and I get pregnant. This whole process, this whole spectrum is natural. So that's why we don't guarantee eggs, we guarantee embryos, because now we know even younger women may have bad cycle and then produce less eggs, and then produce eggs for less quality, and then produce no embryos. And we think that shouldn't be the responsibility of the receiver. That's why we take place at that moment. If this cycle wasn't really successful, we make a new cycle for her for no extra cost.
Thank you. When transferring embryos, does the doctor transfer one or two?
This is a very, very important thing to speak about. In egg donation, transferring more than one embryo is something that we really shouldn't do. Why? My personal opinion, I think clinics that transfer more than one embryo in egg donation is because either they don't have confidence in their embryos and their quality, and they're afraid that one of those is not going to attach, and therefore better transfer two at the same time, or because they haven't prepared the patient properly to transfer. We allow nowadays still double transfer in a very small collective of patients. They must be under 45. The embryos cannot be genetically tested, and they must come from egg donation or own eggs. Embryo donation is always one single embryo. Patients above 45 are not allowed to transfer any double embryos, more than one embryos. And if the embryo is genetically tested, regardless of the age of the patient, we don't transfer more than one.
Two questions together. When you match donors with patients, it's just physical attributes? And what is the best recommended BMI weight range?
Regarding the first question, the thing, I lost myself.
If we match donors just with the physical characteristics or with something else?
Sorry, I lost myself. Very simple. If you make a treatment with us, you're going to be asked to describe yourself with some features, send us pictures of yourself, but at the end, you're going to be asked to describe yourself in other features, like hobbies, things you think you're good on, psychological factors, because at the end, where we have these 4 to 5 donors to select from, we use those things to select the best possible donor. Let's say we have a donor, a receiver, I'm sorry, that has studied arts and music and loves to ride horses. And that's what she used to describe herself. Very common, simple example. And the donor we discover, he has a bachelor in music as well, or she studied music as well, then probably this donor is going to be the perfect suitable for that other patient if she's already passed all the other selection process. So these other factors are also important for us. That depending, talking about matching from donors and receivers. And if we're speaking about BMA, I are very different in this process. It's very easy to sit on a corner and tell a woman who has overweight that she needs to lose weight, end of the story. And she needs to come to under 30, at the best around 25 BMA. This is hard to do. This is easy to say for someone from the other position, and it's very hard for a person to accomplish. My commitment in this process to the patients is I need to see that they're making something to lose weight. Whatever they do to lose weight, and if they prove that they're losing weight, I'm already happy with that. Because with that, you see the commitment. At the end, what we need is for the patients to commit to the process and try to do it. And once she's on the process, she's going to continue because she's going to feel better, she's going to be successful, and it moves forward. Ideally, we shouldn't treat patients with a BMI above 35. Ideally, under 30, if possible. I'm not hearing you.
Sorry. The question was that if the donor makes, for example, 8 embryos, can you freeze the remaining ones for a future try?
It's not that you can, you must. There's something that we need to understand of the legal frame in Spain. After we have eggs and we fertilize the sperms and we produce embryos, those embryos are for the Spanish legislation, the babies of that family. And they have rights on it, but they have obligations on it. And they need to take care of them until there is not possible to make any future transfers. So this is not a can, this is a must.
We have time for a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
Next one would be about the age restrictions in Spain.
For what?
Age restrictions, how old is legal to get the transfer?
In these terms, there is not an actual legislation which says until which age we can treat patients. We do have a Spanish Society for Fertility, and the recommendation from this is not to treat patients above 50 years old. As of 50.
And we have a patient who says that she has an appointment in Manchester. She does all the tests there, needs the patient to come here to Spain to do everything again, or it can be online?
No, actually with the clinic in Manchester, we're working on having an integrated system, and we're looking forward to treat patients together. So the whole preparations, whole blood tests, whole treatment goes there, and the patient will come to us just, for example, if she needs special tests that we do in Spain, or just for the transfer if needed. This is something we're working on with a new chief of structures protocols, the Dr. Manuel Izquierdo. We would share the last name, but we are not family. And this is our future. We are nowadays trying to prepare our patients in all of the clinics and to centralize the transfers in Spain, if possible.
How many photos do you take from patient?
We don't take the photos, the patients send the photos themselves. And we always say, in average, 3 to 5 is a good number, and from different ages. So one around 20, 30, and 40, so we can get an evolution from the patient and to compare for the donor.
Thank you. Next question. Is the legislation around anonymous donors that we have here in Spain the same for the clinic in Manchester?
A very complicated thing. In Manchester, there is a legal frame, and Spain is another legal frame. It means if you want to have a transfer in Manchester, those embryos need to be produced in Manchester with Manchester legislation. If you prepare yourself in Manchester but get a transfer in Spain, you're getting no details from the donor in Spain. This is the topic. Wherever you make the transfer and the embryo was produced is the legislation we need to respect. So if you go to Manchester extract the eggs of a donor or defreeze them, fertilize them, and transfer, that you get all the information you want from Manchester. But if they are not available to do an egg donation for you, and you must come to Spain for an egg donation in Spain for the transfer, you're getting no information from the donor. Anonymous, again.
And the last question. Can the preparatory test be done in the home country rather than in Spain?
Depends on what home country means. Sometimes we have cooperations clinic in many parts of Europe, like in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Germany, in Switzerland, in I think I've got them all. And with the help of your home gynecologist, we can perform some tests. Most of them, there are very specific things that we might not be able to do, that, like Kier test or immune assay, but many of those are possible to be done abroad.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Izquierdo. That was the last question we have. So thank you all for your attendance. We remind you can contact us in the email you can see there, contact@ivfspain.com, for any personalized question that you maybe felt a bit shy to share with us. Just send us an email and we'll be glad to answer you.
Bye. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
You do as well.